I didn't plan on writing any of this. I honestly never wanted to think about it again. But ever since that trip, I haven't slept for more than 2 hours at a time. And when I do sleep, I see her. Not in some symbolic, dreamlike way. I mean, I literally see her. The woman from the mirror. She just stands there at the foot of the bed, her fingers twitching, eyes wide like they've been forcibly peeled open. I've moved apartments, changed my number, switched jobs. Hell, I even stopped using Airbnb. But none of that helped. So maybe writing this down will. Maybe if I tell someone what really happened, I'll finally stop waking up screaming in the middle of the night. Let me back up. This all happened 6 months ago. My 2 best friends, Rachel and Connor, decided we needed a break from everything. Life had been rough for all of us. Rachel had just gotten out of a messy engagement. Connor lost his dad to cancer. And I was just burnt out. Working a 9-to-6 marketing job in New York that was slowly draining the life out of me. We wanted to escape. Just the 3 of us like old times. We picked a cozy little Airbnb tucked away in the Catskills. It looked like the perfect place to recharge. 2 stories, rustic interior, an old fireplace, surrounded by woods and mountains. No neighbors for miles. The listing said, authentic 1800s farmhouse with modern upgrades and a rich history. If I could go back, I'd smack myself for not questioning what that history really meant. The drive there was smooth. Rachel was in the passenger seat DJing, and Connor and I were arguing over whether The Shining counts as a road trip movie. It was one of those rare moments where everything feels light again, like maybe the weight we'd all been carrying could finally be left behind. We got there right before sunset. The place was gorgeous, more secluded than I expected, but still picturesque. You know those horror movies that start with drone shots of a beautiful house in the middle of nowhere? Yeah, it looked exactly like that. Red painted wood, a creaky front porch, and tall pine trees swaying gently all around. For a second, I actually felt grateful, like we'd found something special. The host had left us a little note on the counter with a bottle of wine. Welcome, enjoy your stay. There's plenty of firewood out back. And please don't mind the locked door under the stairs. It's just storage. Best, Danielle. We barely noticed the note. We were too busy unpacking, blasting music, laughing like idiots. It felt like the first time in years we were allowed to just exist without pressure. The first night was uneventful, mostly. We played card games, grilled outside, and talked way too late into the night. I think it was past 2 a.m. when I finally crawled into my room upstairs. Rachel and Connor were both on the ground floor. I had the only bedroom above. That was the first time I heard the footsteps. At first I thought it was Connor coming up to use the bathroom, but the steps were too slow, deliberate, like someone was placing each foot down with unnatural care. And they stopped just outside my door. I held my breath, waiting for a knock, or for the door to creak open, but nothing happened. Eventually, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. I told myself the house was just old, probably creaked when it cooled down, that kind of thing. But the next morning, Connor asked if I'd gotten up in the night. No, I said. Why? I heard someone on the stairs, thought it was you. I tried to laugh it off. We were city kids. Unfamiliar noises in the woods could freak anyone out. It didn't mean anything. Or so I thought. Later that day, Rachel mentioned something weird, too. I think the mirror in the upstairs hallway is one way, she said casually while we were all drinking coffee. What do you mean? I asked. I don't know. When I walked past it this morning, it didn't reflect me right away. Like there was a delay, or something else was there. Connor and I laughed, told her she was imagining things, joked that maybe the house was haunted, but under our laughter there was a shift, something in the air that none of us wanted to acknowledge. That afternoon it started to snow lightly. The forecast hadn't mentioned it, and it didn't stop. By 8 p.m., we were snowed in. No phone service, no Wi-Fi, no way to drive out. Still, we tried to make the best of it. We drank, told scary stories, and even joked about being in a horror movie. But when I went to grab more firewood from the backyard, I saw something that made my stomach twist. Footprints in the snow, coming from the woods, but none going back. The thing about footprints is, they don't lie. Snow doesn't shift itself into neat patterns of boot soles, and these weren't ours. We'd only been out back once since we arrived, and that was hours ago. These prints were fresh, still crisp at the edges, like they'd been made minutes ago, but they didn't lead back to the woods. Just one trail, coming out. I followed them with my eyes. They came straight from the tree line and stopped right beneath the window of the upstairs hallway. My hallway. The one with the old mirror Rachel had mentioned earlier. I stood there for a long time, listening. There was no wind, no rustle of leaves, just the eerie silence of a snow-blanketed forest and the thump of my own heartbeat. Eventually, I forced myself to turn around and head back inside. I didn't tell Rachel or Connor about what I saw. I told myself it could have been an animal, or maybe a hunter, or some previous guests passing through. Anything to make it make sense. But deep down, something inside me had already started to twist and churn. That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house felt too loud, too intentional. At one point, I thought I heard someone whispering my name. So softly, I couldn't tell if it was real or my mind playing tricks. Around 3 a.m., I got up and tiptoed to the hallway, thinking maybe a hot drink would help. That's when I saw it. The mirror. It looked different. Same frame, same smudged glass, but something about the reflection was off. I stood in front of it and waved. No delay this time. My reflection moved with me, but then it smiled before I did. It smiled first. Just a twitch, a half smirk, but unmistakable. I froze, mouth dry, unable to move. Then it returned to normal, like nothing had happened. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, told myself I was exhausted, stressed. Maybe the wine was still in my system, anything to avoid what my gut was screaming. I went back to bed, threw the blankets over my head like a damn kid. The next morning, Connor was gone. Not missing exactly, just not in the house. His shoes were still by the door, but he was nowhere to be found. We searched the house, called out into the woods. No response. His phone sat charging on the kitchen counter, dead. Maybe he just went for a walk, Rachel said, though she sounded as unconvinced as I felt. In this weather, I gestured toward the window, where snow still poured down like ash from a dying sky. With no jacket, no phone. She didn't have an answer. By noon, we started panicking. I wanted to call the cops, but with no cell service and no landline, we were screwed. The car couldn't make it through the snowdrift. We were completely cut off. That's when Rachel found the door under the stairs, the one from the note. It was locked, rusted shut more like. But she noticed something strange. Small muddy fingertips on the white wood, like someone or something had been pressing from the inside. She screamed when she saw it, and that was the first time I saw real terror on her face. We both stood there for a minute, not saying anything, just breathing heavily, our eyes glued to those dark little prints. Then we heard the knock. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow raps. From the other side of the door, we bolted. I don't even remember grabbing the flashlight, but suddenly we were in the upstairs bedroom, barricading ourselves in like kids in a ghost story. Rachel was crying. I was shaking so bad I nearly dropped the light. "What the hell is happening?" she kept whispering. "Where's Connor? Who's down there?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know, because I didn't want to know. But something kept scratching at the inside of my skull. A memory, that damned mirror. I got up and turned it to face the wall. I don't know why. It felt like instinct, like the way you turn photos of your loved ones around when you're doing something you're ashamed of. That night, I dreamed again. Not about the house, about my apartment in New York. I was in bed, everything pitch black, except for the soft blue light from my alarm clock. I could hear someone breathing. Not me, someone else in the room. Shallow, labored, like they were injured or excited. I turned slowly in the dream and saw her, the woman from the mirror, standing beside my bed, face pale, lips bruised, hair hanging wet like she'd just crawled out of a river. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, and then she leaned in and whispered, "He's under the stairs." I woke up, gagging, choking. Rachel was gone. The moment I sat up, I knew something was wrong. The door to the bedroom was wide open. I had locked it. I know I locked it. Rachel was nowhere in sight. Her sleeping bag still lay crumpled in the corner, like she had just stepped out to use the bathroom. But everything in my gut screamed otherwise. I called out her name once, then twice. No response. A faint chill wrapped around my legs. Not the cold of the drafty old house. This was different. It felt like someone was standing behind me, watching, breathing softly into the back of my neck. I didn't turn around. Instead, I grabbed the flashlight, took a breath, and stepped out into the hallway. The mirror was facing the wall, still, but something had been scraped into the plaster below it. Fresh, jagged lines like fingernails dragged with violent intent. 4 deep gouges, perfectly parallel, and beneath them, one word carved in small, uneven strokes. Stay. I reached out without thinking and ran my fingers over the letters. The wood felt damp. From down the hallway, a soft creak echoed. It came from behind the door under the stairs. I didn't want to go back down there. Every cell in my body was telling me not to. But I had no choice. Rachel was missing. Connor was already gone, and I was the only one left. As I descended the stairs, each step felt longer than the last. The air was thick, heavy with a mildew-sweet rot that stuck to the back of my throat. When I reached the door, I saw something new. It was open, just a crack, barely wide enough to fit your fingers through. But it had definitely moved since last night. The muddy prints on it were smeared now, like someone had clawed their way out. I pushed it open slowly. A groan echoed through the floorboards, long and deep, like the house was exhaling. Behind the door was a staircase, steep, narrow, and pitch black. The flashlight barely cut through the darkness ahead. The walls were stone, damp, dripping, and every few steps I spotted strange symbols carved into them. Circles with lines through the centers, triangles surrounded by runes I couldn't understand. Some were painted, others scratched so deeply into the surface they bled red-brown rust. Halfway down I started hearing it, a whisper, not a voice exactly, more like the echo of one, like when you hear someone calling your name in a dream and you're not sure if it's real. Emily? My name. Software, male. Familiar. Connor? I sped up. Against every rational thought in my head, I moved faster, heart pounding, light shaking in my hand. The stairs curved at the bottom into a narrow hallway, ending at an old wooden door bolted shut with rusty nails. The whispers grew louder as I approached, but the moment my hand touched the handle, silence. I opened the door. Inside was a small room, bare concrete walls, one dangling bulb from the ceiling. In the middle, a mirror, The same mirror, same ornate frame, same smudged glass. But this one was cracked. A jagged line split it top to bottom, like a scar. I stepped forward. In the reflection, the room was empty, but something was wrong with my face. My eyes looked darker. My skin, a sickly pale, and there was a smile tugging at the corners of my lips. One I wasn't making. Then my reflection moved. I didn't. She raised her hand slowly and placed her palm flat against the glass. Behind her, Rachel appeared, in the mirror, mouth gagged, eyes wide with terror, hands tied behind her back. She stood in the corner of the reflected room, sobbing silently as shadowed arms wrapped around her torso and dragged her backward into the blackness. I screamed. I reached forward and slammed my fist into the glass. It didn't shatter. Instead, my own hand met the cold, smooth surface, and something grabbed it from the other side. Fingers like ice wrapped around my wrist and yanked hard. I staggered back, tripping over a broken tile, heart hammering as the mirror shook violently on its hook. Then suddenly, it went still. My reflection returned to normal. Rachel was gone. I stumbled out of the room and ran back upstairs. The snow outside was falling harder now. Swirling like a blizzard was brewing. I tried the car again, praying it might start. No luck. The engine sputtered once and died. I felt trapped, isolated, like the walls of the house were closing in with every breath. Later that night, I heard the scratches. They came from inside the walls, fainter at first, like the skittering of a mouse, then louder, closer, a rhythmic scrape, scrape, scrape that circled the room slowly. I pressed my ear to the wood and froze, breathing, heavy, wet, right behind the wall. That's when I heard her voice. Rachel, help me. Muffled, weak, like she was speaking through layers of insulation. I pounded the wall with my fist, called her name, no answer. I started tearing through the drywall with anything I could find. A broken coat hanger, a screwdriver, my bare hands. I peeled away chunks until my fingers bled, coughing from the dust. But behind the wall, there was nothing. No hidden room, no crawl space, just solid wood, and still. The scratching continued. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mirror, that damn smile, Rachel screaming behind the glass, Connor's voice calling me from the basement. In the early hours, just before dawn, I heard a door open, soft steps coming upstairs. The bedroom door creaked open slowly, and then I saw him, Connor, soaked to the bone, pale, shivering, eyes wide and unfocused like he'd been sleepwalking. He stood there for a second, then whispered, "She's not who she says she is." I stared at him, my body frozen. "What are you talking about?" I managed. He just shook his head. "She's in the mirror now." Connor collapsed onto the floor. He was barefoot, clothes soaked through with icy water, and trembling so violently I thought he might crack in half. His lips were blue, his pupils wide, nearly swallowing the whites of his eyes. I dragged him onto the couch, wrapped him in the only dry blanket I could find, and tried to make sense of what he had just said. "She's in the mirror now." "Connor," I whispered, "what does that mean? Where were you?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared into the fireplace like he was looking through it, through the flames and the stone and the wall behind it, like he was seeing something on the other side. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw, like he'd been screaming for hours. "I woke up in the basement," he said, "but it wasn't the same one. The walls were breathing. I know how that sounds, but I swear to God, Emily, I saw them move. They pulsed like lungs. There was water all over the floor, but not like a leak. More like we were underwater, like the room was sinking." He paused, coughing. eyes flicking to the darkened window. I tried to get out, but every door I opened led back to the same place. Same hallway, same stairs, same mirror. Except every time I looked into it, something was closer, like it was watching me, waiting for me to stop, to look too long. He swallowed, hard. That's when I saw her. Rachel? He nodded. She was in the mirror, crying, screaming, but I couldn't hear her. It was like watching a movie. Something had her, something tall, black, with hands that weren't hands. Long, thin fingers that kept twitching, like they didn't know what to do with themselves. It touched her face, like it was learning what skin felt like. I felt my stomach twist. I tried to reach her. He continued. I punched the mirror, again and again, but every time I hit it, I felt like something inside me cracked. Not bones, something else, my head, my chest. Like the glass was reflecting not just me, but parts of me, my thoughts, my fears. He looked at me finally, eyes wide. Then I saw you. I froze. What? In the mirror, he said. But it wasn't you. It looked like you, but it wasn't. You were smiling, that same smile I saw earlier, and your eyes were bleeding black. You said something. He paused, voice barely a whisper. You said, "Stay here. Let the others go." I couldn't respond. I just sat there, heart pounding, wondering if we'd stepped into something way beyond our understanding. If the stories we'd laughed at online were never supposed to be funny. If people disappearing from Airbnbs wasn't some rare freak case, but part of something bigger, older. I looked around the room. The mirror above the fireplace was gone. Number not gone. Turned around. The back of the mirror now faced us like someone or something didn't want us looking into it anymore. And for a second I was relieved until I heard the footsteps upstairs. Connor grabbed my hand. "Don't move," he whispered. We listened. Slow, deliberate steps pacing from one end of the hall to the other. Then back again. A pause. Then a voice. Faint. Female. "Connor." It was Rachel's voice. He stood up before I could stop him. "No," I hissed. "We don't know what that is." "I do," he said, and moved toward the stairs. He turned the corner, and I waited in the silence that followed, tense, frozen, clutching the fire poker in my hands, like it could save me from whatever was upstairs. Then I heard him scream. Not just fear, not just pain. Agony. I ran, up the stairs, down the hallway, through the half-open door at the end. And what I saw made me stumble back and drop the poker with a metallic clang. Connor stood in the middle of the room, eyes wide and unfocused, mouth hanging open. In front of him, Rachel, but not our Rachel. She was grinning, eyes pitch black, skin pale and translucent, like wax paper stretched over veins. Her hair hung in damp, stringy clumps, and her neck bent slightly too far to the left. She whispered something into Connor's ear, and he smiled back. Then slowly, he turned toward me. "She says you can stay, too." I backed up. "You're not real," I muttered. Rachel's head twitched, and then the room went dark. Total blackout. No sound, no breath, no time. When the lights returned, they were both gone. I don't remember running. I just remember the snow slapping my face as I stumbled into the night. I ran barefoot, no coat, no phone. Just ran until I saw lights in the distance. A farmhouse, an old couple who called the police. They found the house empty. No Rachel, no Connor, no mirrors. The Airbnb listing disappeared 2 days later. It's been 11 months. I haven't spoken about this to anyone since the night I was pulled from that snowy roadside. Every therapist, every cop, every friend has told me the same thing. Trauma does strange things to the brain. My mind is trying to cope, to rationalize. They all say the same words in different orders. Hallucination, shock, dissociation, but they weren't there. They didn't feel the air shift. They didn't see what replaced my friends. They didn't stand outside that cursed Airbnb and watch its lights flicker, like the house itself was breathing and watching me. After I was rescued, I stayed in the hospital for 5 days. Pneumonia, mild frostbite. No sign of a head injury, no drugs in my system. Nothing to explain why I kept screaming in my sleep, or why I refused to go near mirrors. The couple who found me, Arthur and Helen Whitmore, were kind but cautious. Arthur, an old farmer who had lived in that area all his life, said something to me that stuck. I told my boy not to buy that land. He muttered the second night, while sipping tea in the room beside mine. Too close to those woods. Bad things grow where bad blood's been spilled. I asked him what he meant, and he told me a story, one he hadn't told anyone in decades. In '83, he said, a woman named Eleanor Black built a boarding house just beyond that hill. It was meant to be a retreat. Yoga, meditation, isolation. She said the land was thin, that the veil between worlds was fragile there. She thought she could tap into it, learn things, reach things. I felt my blood chill. And she succeeded, he said simply. At least that's what the papers said. 3 of her guests vanished. One showed up days later, bleeding from the eyes and screaming about a mirror woman. Another was found walking naked in the woods, whispering about a version of herself that never stopped smiling. Eleanor was never seen again, and no one ever found the house. Then how do you know? Because I saw it. Once. Driving back from a bar. There was a girl in the window. She looked like my daughter. He paused. My daughter had died 6 years earlier. The silence between us after that was suffocating. When I was discharged, I filed a police report. They humored me, checked the Airbnb listing. It had vanished. I begged them to visit the property. The address I gave them, no such property existed anymore. I had screenshots, GPS data. None of it mattered, as if it had been scrubbed from reality. But I didn't give up. I spent the next 10 months digging. Reddit, 4chan old YouTube videos, creepy Facebook threads from groups with names like Don't Look in the Mirror at Night and Thin Places USA. Most were fake. Creepypasta, roleplay, but some weren't. Some mentioned a Rachel, a girl with long black hair who smiled too much. Others mentioned a house that smelled like wet dirt and made mirrors turn cold to the touch. A few described hearing footsteps in the walls, seeing versions of themselves with slightly wrong eyes. A few people even described Connor, his birthmark, his laugh. One post chilled me the most. It was titled, "They're building homes where she died. Don't stay the night." Posted by a user with no other activity. It read, "My brother and his friends booked a house for a ski trip outside of Montpellier. It was brand new, barely a year old. 5 of them. Only one came back. He won't speak anymore. Just sits and stares into the glass door on our fridge. Sometimes I swear I see a woman behind him, smiling, waiting. Don't go looking. If the house finds you first, it won't let you leave the same." I had no way to verify it, but I knew it was real because that post had a photo attached, a blurry night shot of a snowy front yard, and standing in the far window, barely visible, was Rachel, her head tilted too far, her grin stretched too wide, and her hand was pressed against the glass, like she was trying to get out or invite someone in. I haven't stayed in an Airbnb since. I barely sleep. I cover every mirror in my apartment with blankets, and I live on the 2nd floor of a building in Manhattan with no basements. But last week, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, No postage, just a torn scrap of paper folded inside a blank envelope. It read, "Rachel says she misses you. She saved you a room. Don't keep her waiting." And beneath that, a photo. Me, standing outside that same Airbnb. Only I've never seen that photo before, and I'm smiling.